Happy Tuesday, everybody. We want to welcome you back into the break room. We've got with us today none other than Dr. Ruby Denson. So glad to have you with us, Dr. Ruby. We call her Dr. Ruby because she's fixing to be Dr. Ruby, but she's been in healthcare for many, many years. How long have you been in healthcare?
About 35 years.
35 years. Nurse practitioner right now, but moving on into that doctorate. But she serves as our coordinator and director for health and wellness. She is our congregational health nurse, and she does her best to make sure we have a healthy congregation. So, Dr. Ruby, it is the week of Thanksgiving. We're getting ready to have that big Thanksgiving meal. And so this is National Diabetes Awareness Month. And so we wanted to bring you in to really kind of talk about that. We've given a whole lot of attention to COVID, of course, during this last 7, 8, 9 months. But we want to talk and switch a little bit today to talk about diabetes awareness. And so tell us, for those who may not know, what is diabetes?
Well, basically, diabetes is when your body has too much sugar in it, and it cannot control or cannot compensate for the amount of sugar that you're ingesting. So that's what diabetes is. We have several different types of diabetes, and as we go along, we can talk about those different types.
Right. So type 1, type 2.
Right. So let's go into that. Well, type 2 is the most familiar one. It's the adult onset type. Okay. You usually get it when you are 40 years old or 40 years or older, but certainly you can get it much sooner than the age of 40. And in our society and how our eating habits have been over the years, we have been seeing diabetes type 2 in even our younger generation, like with our children who lead sedentary lives, or have obesity and just are not active because they usually are in playing PlayStations and all of that. But the type 2 one, I just want to emphasize, that's usually with the adult onset, and that's the most common type of diabetes that we will see, and it's over 90% of the diabetes that you will see anywhere. Type 1 diabetes is what they used to call many years ago as juvenile diabetes. It was initially thought that you had this type diabetes as a child, but it is not only seen in children. Type 1 diabetes is kind of like an autoimmune response that has happened some point in your lifetime, or you could have even been born with it, but it causes your pancreas not to function. And your pancreas is the organ of the body that produces insulin. And I want you to know that we have to have insulin in order to sustain life. So the pancreas functioning well and in the appropriate way, that's what we have to have. And when you don't have that, you have to have insulin on board. And that's what we call exogenous insulin. That's where you have to give yourself an insulin shot in order to maintain or sustain life. Now with type 2, it's a little bit different, because of the nature of type 2 diabetes. We say that it is usually an adult onset, and it's usually seen where our body does not produce enough insulin. Your pancreas still may be functioning like it's supposed to function, but because of other comorbid conditions and things that's going on, they call it the metabolic syndrome, where your body cannot there's a phenomenon that goes on where a whole bunch of things that happens at one time, and your body just don't produce enough insulin to take care of the amount of sugar that's in your bloodstream. So you have to do some other things. Now, you can take insulin as well with type 2 diabetes, but it's not required to sustain life. But most people, when they're first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, then what they usually want to do, they want to take a pill or something like that. But typically when we see our patients who initially are diagnosed with diabetes, it's usually at a point in time where they have to have that insulin initially in order to get it under control. And I support that, and I encourage that, because insulin is what your body naturally makes. Your body doesn't make a pill like metformin or Amaryl or glipizide or any of those pills, or even these newer insulin injectable medications to treat diabetes. So what we would like to see, is that you get on the right regimen, and so you can partner with your healthcare provider, and they can get you the knowledge and the information that you need in order to be able to get that under control.
So what do people living with diabetes need to know? What are some self-care strategies?
Well, glad you asked. There are some important things that we really truly need to focus on with living with diabetes. And basically it's just the importance of managing your diabetes. Okay, you need to first of all, you need to partner with your healthcare provider, and see your healthcare provider on a regular routine basis, so that you can know what your numbers are. You need to know what your blood glucose numbers are, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your weight, because all of those things factor into managing your diabetes. So that's the very first thing. Living with diabetes, you need to know how to be able to manage a healthy lifestyle of eating. So you need to know what type of foods to eat, and so you would partner or get information from your local dietitian, and have that appointment with your dietitian, so that she can go over the information that you will need to know about how to eat healthy. Exercise is key and critical. Even if it's only like a brisk walk, 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week, that is so important into maintaining your diabetes control. Another thing is you need to know what your blood sugar levels are, because say, for example, if your blood sugars are way too high, then you go out and you eat a sugary meal, that it's going to make it even higher. And that could put you at risk, or for some other problems or complications. And on the opposite hand, if your blood sugar is low, then if you go out and do a vigorous exercise, then you can compromise yourself. Then you can, make it even lower, and then that can cause some health problems or some issues from that perspective as well. So those are a few things that you need to know specifically about living with diabetes.
Right. So what are some things people can do to monitor their blood sugar?
So technology has grown from leaps and bounds over the last few years or so. Initially, there were only the techniques where you could get your glucose. You get a glucometer, a blood sugar machine, and you prick your finger. But now they have all of these fancy things. They have the little implantable devices where you don't even have to stick your fingers anymore. You can just put your they'll put this little implantable device underneath your skin, and you have a little device, and you can scan your blood sugar throughout the day and monitor throughout the day. That's real important too for people who are managing living with diabetes, because some people just say, well, I just don't want to give myself the shots, and I just get tired of sticking myself. And then with the different type diabetes, specifically the type 1 diabetics, they have to have insulin, so they're going to get the more injectables, the shots and all of those. But there are also what we call insulin pumps, and you need to know and be aware of what your blood sugars are at all times, even throughout the day, and when you're planning and preparing for your meals. And these devices, like the glucometers, which you can use, and then the other devices where they're implantable underneath your skin, and they can check your blood sugars on a frequent basis and give you that information that you need.
Okay. I've actually been around and have seen people go into diabetic shock where it was either too high or too low. And so for people who live with people who are diabetic, what are some things they need to watch for?
So let's talk about this first, let's talk about what's normal blood sugar levels. So, a normal blood sugar level for a person who's not diabetic is anywhere from 70 to 110. That's what, if you were to eat and 2 hours later, then at some point in time, your blood sugar is going to fall between that range. However, if you're diabetic, we would like, as healthcare providers, to see you fall within the range of 80 to 120. That's, before any meal. That's before breakfast, before lunch, and before dinner. So it's important to know that number. That's why I say, you have to know all of your numbers, not only your blood sugar, but, other things as well. But if you know your blood sugar numbers, you can know when you are getting into trouble. And the family members too. Now, just because you have a normal blood sugar a reading does not mean that you may not be compromised, because some people have a higher threshold, some people have a lower threshold. So I've seen people who become what we call hypoglycemic. We say 70 or below. That's the standard for when you have low blood sugar. But I've seen people who have had crises when their blood sugar get down to 80 or a number of like that. But it depends on how they are managing their diabetes and how well their body controls it. So you just have to know your body, and you need to be familiar with, if you are caring for someone with diabetes in the home, know what's normal, what's routine for them, and always have a plan. Have a plan for when they have high blood sugars, or have a plan when they have low blood sugar.
So my grandmother has always had low blood sugar. So we can, she knows when her body is getting out of kilter, so to speak. So we always have to keep some candy or some crackers with peanut butter, something like that around, that if it drops too low. So if someone's blood sugar is typically too low, that too is considered diabetic?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay,
no.
okay,
It could be, some other condition, but if it is too low, that is one of the things that we see with diabetes. Now, with low blood sugars, like you said, with your grandmother, you always have something available. I would like to share this information with people when you're treating or trying to manage a low blood sugar. Make sure it's a sugar that is something that can get into their system quickly. So like an orange juice. Don't try like a Snickers candy bar, because if you give them a Snickers chocolate,
from one extreme to the other extreme.
Well, chocolate has a lot of fat in it, and it takes a while before it can get into your system, and then it can raise your blood sugar. It probably will do it, but it won't do it immediately. If you got somebody with a low blood sugar, you need to get that sugar in, quickly. Even if you have to open up a packet of sugar and put it under their tongue, give them a thing of orange juice, or give them a piece of hard candy, peppermint, or Coca-Cola, something that you know is going to bring it up. However, when you bring that blood sugar up, you want to, bring it up, sure enough. But if their blood sugar is brought up fast, what you want to do is make sure that you compensate and let them go ahead on and get a meal, a normal meal. Because, of course, if you drink something that's high in sugar, your blood sugar is going to shoot up and spike up. So you want to correct whatever the problem is underlying, and then make sure that they have a meal. So you also want to continue to monitor their blood sugars to make sure that they are in a safe zone, so that they can continue to, function normally, or get out of that state where they're getting jittery or nervous or agitated, because those are some of the symptoms that we typically see when you have low blood sugar. You can get you have headaches, you can be real irritable, you get real jittery, you can just be lethargic, and so those are some things that you really need to watch for.
Okay. So what are the tests that need to be performed routinely for those who know they're dealing with diabetic conditions?
So, and as I said, type 2 diabetes is usually or typically seen, starting at age of 40, but we can see that much earlier, much sooner, because of, like I said, the lifestyle, that we live here in our country. Everything is supersized. We want to supersize the fries, the drinks, and all of that.
Lots of preservatives.
Yes,
lots of
sugary
fillers,
drinks. Yes, ice cream, cookies, and all of that. Our kids are not getting as much exercise as we used to do, because recess was a part of the curriculum for school when I was in school. That's a long time ago, but now we don't see that as often. But what you need to do is what needs to be the test that needs to be performed every year or annually. If you're 40 or above, you need to have just a regular chemistry where it looks at your blood glucose level. Now, if you are diabetic, you need to have what a specific test called a hemoglobin A1C. And this particular blood test, it's a blood test that takes a blood cell. And, you know, the lifespan of a blood cell is about 3 months, 120 days. So what it does is it takes that one blood cell and it counts the sugar molecules on that blood cell. And it gives us a clearer picture of how your blood sugar is averaging over a 3-month time period. So some patients can fool you, have fooled me because, you know, in practicing for 35 years, I have patients that have come in fasting that hadn't had anything for 12 or 14 hours. Their blood sugars will be normal. But you do a hemoglobin A1C on them and their hemoglobin A1C is 12 and 14. So going back, let's bring it back a little bit. You know, the normal hemoglobin A1C for the diabetic or to let you know that you're not diabetic, we like to see it. There are two academies that, you know, give us guidelines. One says they want your A1C 6.5 and below, and then one says 7 and below. But it depends on what healthcare provider you're going to, and what other comorbid conditions that you have, because some physicians don't want you to have a low blood sugar, you know, range if you are diabetic, because it can cause some other problems if your blood sugar drops down too low. So that hemoglobin A1C is crucial. It is one of the diagnostic tests now that can, you know, give us information to say whether or not you're diabetic. When I first started practicing, it was not one of the confirmatory tests to tell whether or not you were diabetic. You used to have to do specific testing. You have to be fasting for like 10 to 14 hours and get your blood work drawn. And then if your blood sugar was over 200 for, you know, any random time when you got your blood sugar tested, then we could give a diagnosis at that point. But now, like I said, with all of the new technology and all of the innovations that have come out recently, we can now, you know, detect and, you know, let you know that you have diabetes much earlier. So we were talking about the types of diabetes, type 1, type 2, but then, you know, there's pre-diabetes. That's right when you're right at the cusp. You know, you're almost at that verge or that tipping point. That's when if you go to your healthcare provider and you, every now and then you might go and your blood sugar is like 145. Then you need to really be, and you're right at that age of 40, and then, you know, you're a little overweight, you haven't been exercising, you need to be visiting that, you know, that process at that point in time to say, okay, hey, I need to get it together. I need to start exercising, eating healthy, watching what I eat, and then, you know, following up to just check my blood sugars, because you could, you know, be what we call pre-diabetic. And it is real common, very common with type 2 diabetes. If you have a family history of diabetes, then you'll be at a greater chance of getting diabetes if you have someone in your family, like mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, and then basically on your eating habits. And, you know, like Thanksgiving is about to come up.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
In a couple of days.
Exactly.
So I know a lot of times people have things before them at Thanksgiving that they don't have at other times. And so the tendency is to get some of everything 2 or 3 times during the course of that day. But we know for people it's not good for anybody. But typically when you're dealing with someone who is diabetic, especially depending on if it's under control or well managed or not, we know that could actually be a game changer for somebody.
Absolutely.
So how often should somebody be seeing their primary care physician?
So you should be seen by your primary care provider every 3 months, if possible, if your insurance plans allows for that. I know some insurance plans don't allow for that, but if you could, every 3 months, if you are diabetic, you can go in and get your hemoglobin A1C, you know, monitored and checked. Most insurance companies will pay for that that type of screening if you are diabetic. For sure, if you don't know, at least annually after the age of 40, you need to get your baseline labs. You need to get a chemistry done where you look at the glucose, your sodium and potassium, and all of that. You also need to do just a regular CBC. And then knowing your numbers, it's also important to know what your cholesterol levels. By me practicing for so very long, I've learned to look at other labs like on the cholesterol. Most diabetics that I treat and have treated in the past, I always see a 10 of elevation in their triglycerides. That's one of the first things that I see or notice that elevates. And so when I see that trend, and then I see a slightly elevated glucose, then I'm gonna sit down with my patient, and I'm gonna just say, okay, well, look, you got a family history, you've got a sedentary lifestyle, you got you gain a little weight, you're over 40, so now it's the time for you to actually be thinking about, let's try to turn this around or shift this. So to answer your question, every 3 months, at least once a year, depending on your insurance plan, if they allow you to come in that often.
So, one of the things I'm going to definitely ask, just because we are in this COVID environment right now, we've heard that COVID affects people differently based on pre-existing conditions. And from what I've heard, having diabetes is definitely one of those pre-existing conditions. So can you just share with us maybe some of the trends? And we know every single person responds to this virus differently.
Right.
So there's no one size fits all, response for dealing with COVID. But what are some of the trends you've seen among those who are already diabetic who get the virus?
So what I've actually seen is, just as you have mentioned, in the presence of COVID-19, our diabetic populations are one of those populations that are at a higher risk. And I think because they're at a higher risk is because, of the nature of the disease process. Most diabetic patients have other comorbid conditions. They usually are obese. They usually have hypertension. They usually have high cholesterol, and all of those things coupled together, you put your body, you compromise the health of your whole entire body if that's not controlled. If you're not eating healthy, or if you don't have a good blood sugar level, and all of those things are not well controlled. So I think because of the pre-existing other comorbid conditions, it puts you at a greater chance for having a worse outcome with managing or faring well when you have COVID-19. It's sort of like the same thing as with influenza. So, prior to COVID, we always encourage our patients to go ahead on and get your flu shots early, because if your body is already immunocompromised, or if you're compromised with a disease state, then you want to make sure that you are healthy enough to sustain, something else that's coming along, like the flu, as well as COVID.
So when you say get your flu shot early, tell us the best time of the year for people to get their flu shot.
Well, the flu shot, I say. Well, I'm going to just tell you this. Flu season is usually starts in September 1 through March the 31st.
Which is a large portion of the year.
It is, absolutely. And it gives people enough time to actually get it done. But I am an advocate for, getting your flu vaccine early on. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And being in healthcare, I used to always get my vaccine in October. I just say, well, I'm going to just wait till October just to make sure it lasts long enough and all of that. But my issue that I had once was I got the flu, and I was putting it off to try to wait till October, and I had a sinus infection because of the seasonal change. And I had the flu, the worst flu that I've ever had. And once I was really laid out for about 5 or 6 days. So I really encourage anybody that has any kind of morbid health conditions, get it early on. And even if you don't, and if you work in healthcare, definitely do so, because we are a population that are seeing a lot of different people, and you need to be healthy in order to be able to provide the care for your patients. And so I tell all of my patients, get it as early as you possibly can. But I hear all of the
would that be
reasoning.
like August or?
You can start as early as August, because as soon as they come out with a vaccine, it lasts throughout the season to March 31st. I've seen it in a couple of instances where the CDC has extended flu season because they had peaks in the numbers, usually like February and March, and they may extend it out through April. But yes, you need to get it as soon as you possibly can in order to protect yourself and even protect others, because influenza is highly contagious. If you have it, then you can easily spread it to someone else. I think this year our flu season, and I have not seen a high number as of yet. I think that it may be reduced, and the reason why is because we're wearing more masks, and then we're doing more hand sanitizing in the face of COVID. Although we are not there yet with COVID, but I think our numbers with the flu are not going to be as bad as they have been in the previous years. And another thing I want to mention about the flu vaccine, we depend on the CDC in developing the vaccine for the year. Sometimes we may get the mark and match up with the right strand of flu. Sometimes we may not, but it is always important to get it, because even if you get it early or if you get it mid-season, your chances of developing the flu anywhere from 40 to 60%. And even if you get it after you've had the flu shot, then your outcome is usually less than for like having the health illnesses and all of those things following it.
So another thing, as we said, we have Thanksgiving coming up this week. There are a lot of people who have not been with their families throughout the pandemic, trying to be safe. But a lot of people have just said, okay, I'm going to see my family. So what are some things people can do to take some precautions? Because, just from personal observation, people tend to think that because it's their family member, they can't get it. And we've seen from weddings, we've seen from, unfortunately, funerals and repasts, that there have been groups of people who have gotten it. I've heard of families, and we've even had a couple of families in the church who had several family members to pass from group family gatherings. Right. So what are some things, if people are going to come together for dinner and those kinds of things, what are some precautions people can take?
So my take on that, the traditional Thanksgiving where all of the family members come together in the large numbers, we should kind of like avoid that as much as possible. And if we're going to come together in big numbers, try to consider, an activity on the outside where you can, set up tables where you can truly social distance, because, when you take your mask off, you're going to eat. So, and you need to make sure that you are a good distance away from someone, just in case, you are in that space, or that person may have come in contact or been exposed to someone. So you want to make sure you do good hand sanitizing, wear your mask when you're not eating, and just try to practice all these things that we've been doing all along for prevention of COVID. From that standpoint,
and making sure everybody washes their hands. Absolutely. And those one of the things that everybody touches or tends to touch are the utensils. And so I see people do all kind of things in group settings, where germs can be passed. Somebody might get something on their hand and lick their finger, and then they're picking up utensils. Right. And people just don't realize how much of that takes place, And absolutely. So I think I get on everybody's nerves. But washing hands, using gloves, I think touching the utensils, some of those kinds of things. But.
Right. Well, I'm from a large family, so of course, any holiday or gathering is always a production. Because we have just my siblings alone, is a large number. Then their children and their children's children.
Right.
Oh, it could be, like a big thing. So we laugh and joke about it. Okay, well, we're gonna do to-go plates only.
Right.
And we'll still
keep
get
everybody safe.
Absolutely. We're gonna, have you to come in. We'll get you a to-go plate and say, okay, you can go.
Well, the thing too is protecting the elderly, because again, sometimes if you're young and healthy, you have a much better chance of fighting it than someone who's older and already having some things going on. Absolutely. And people tend to forget that you can have it and be asymptomatic and not know it. And you're around people, and then you come up 2 or 3 days later, and it's kind of late. So
absolutely. But that with the COVID for sure. Yeah. But I wanted to share a little bit too, Pastor, about from the diabetes standpoint. We know we have all of the cakes and all of the pies, all of the pastas and all of the potato salads and all of those type things. One important thing I wanted to share with with our audience is just that, when I first started practicing, I didn't realize my patients were not aware that there were other things that can raise your blood sugar up. I had a patient population of a lot of farmers, from the Delta, and they grew their own corn, their own potatoes, their own peas and beans and things like that. Vegetables too are starches, and starches break down into sugar. And sugar, regardless if it's, concentrated sweets or, vegetables from, the starchy vegetables or fruits, it breaks down to sugar, and it can bring your blood sugar up. I would have so many of my patients who were farmers to say, well, I don't eat no cakes and pies and things like that. I just eat from the garden. And they didn't realize that was the reason why their blood sugars were going up. So we want to monitor, the types of foods that we eat, during the holiday season. Not only cakes and pies, but, starchy vegetables, peas, beans, potatoes, corn, all of those things in excessive amounts can raise your blood sugar up significantly. And even fruits. So if you're eating a lot of fruits like grapes and bananas and things of that nature, that can make your blood sugar rise as well. So we definitely want to avoid, the excessive amounts of concentrated sweets with the cakes and the pies and the sugary drinks and beverages and all of those things. But we want to use wisdom and eat in moderation the serving sizes of those starchy type vegetables. Try more green leafy vegetables instead of potato salad. Maybe do a green salad. At a lot of major Thanksgiving dinners, they don't, most people don't have a green salad, on the table, but you just make it fun. There's a lot of healthy recipes out there for green salads that will be really good for families. You can add some nuts, and you can do some different things with the lettuces, instead of the plain old romaine lettuce, you may want to do a spring mix, make it pretty and all of that with the cranberries and all of that. That would make it a little bit more healthy for you.
All right, I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One is, we always talk about the importance of taking care of your feet when people are diabetic. Talk to us about that, why it's important to make sure your feet are taken care of.
Well, I would like to tell you about that as well. It is definitely so very important with that, because when you have diabetes not only affect your feet, there are other organs that they affect, but I'm going to talk about the feet as well. I'm going to share with you all of the other organs. It can affect your eyes, it can affect your kidneys, and it can affect your feet. You when you have high levels of blood sugars for a long period of time, then you can end up with what we call neuropathy, and most of the time it's peripheral neuropathy. You don't feel or have the normal sensation in your feet or even in your hands. So a lot of my patients, when they're walking around, they may bump their feet on the corner of a door or something like that. From the years of having high levels of blood sugars in their system, they lose the protective sensation, that they don't even know, or they are not even aware that that they've hurt their feet. So it is very important to make sure that you inspect your feet every day. If you have a family member or caregiver at home, it's important for them to inspect your feet, especially if you can't. If you have an elderly person in the home that can't get down or bend down to look, to check their feet, it'll be good to invest in like a dollar store mirror, so you can put it on the floor to just look down and then look in between, because diabetic foot ulcers are one of the leading causes of amputations and other complications, and it's very, very costly. It's costly for the patient, their families, for hospitals, because a lot of patients, when you're coming into the hospital, you have to have repeated, hospital visits. It's very costly to, perform these amputations, get the equipment and all of those things. So we want to prevent them, and it can easily be prevented by just doing your foot exams. When you go to your primary care provider, take your shoes and your socks off. Say, okay, they said for you to look at my feet. And that's what every healthcare provider should be doing every time they have a diabetic patient. Have them to take their shoes and socks off so that they can look at that, because ounce of prevention is what?
Worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely. and if we could get that done, that would be one of the major impacts that we can, prevent other complications with our diabetic patients. And I wanted to share too about the other complications. We see a lot of our patients who end up with kidney disease because they have ended up damaging their kidneys. So let me just share what happens with that. When your body has an excessive amount of glucose in the bloodstream, and your pancreas is not producing the insulin that's required in order to bind with that sugar to bring it back into the cells, what happens is, other organs try to compensate, and your kidneys end up trying to compensate for that, and you end up with kidney damage. You start spilling protein in your urine because the protein molecule starts breaking down because it's trying to get the sugar out of your bloodstream, and then it damages your kidney. And that's how a lot of our patients end up on dialysis.
Gotcha.
We see that often, and not only with the diabetes, coupled with that, high blood pressure, problems as well. That's why I say it's very important to know your numbers. And by me practicing in, over the last 35 years, most of the times when I've diagnosed many of my diabetic patients, they won't come in until something really is wrong with them.
Right.
They come in, I can't see, doctor, I can't see. What's wrong with me? You check a blood sugar on them, it's 500. And it has gone on for so long unmanaged and uncontrolled, then they lose vision. They'll lose their vision. So that's another thing where what you should annually get is an annual eye exam, to make sure that your vessels going back to the back of your eyes are healthy and in good control and good tact, and it's not leaking any fluids, because when you have diabetic retinopathy, we see a lot of blood vessel leakage back there, and at that point in time, you end up having to have surgeries and all of that. And you don't want to lose vision, just for not managing your blood sugar. Because if you can manage your blood sugar, you can control a whole bunch of things that can subsequently happen.
Right. So eat healthy, exercise, make sure you're seeing your physician, taking your medications.
Absolutely.
And make sure you're looking after your feet and your eyes. And make sure that your kidneys are healthy.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, look, I feel like we've given some great information today. And I want to thank you for taking the time, number one, to bring awareness to Diabetes Awareness Month. Also to give people information, things to be looking for. And there are people that are watching from all over the nation, even outside of the U.S. And so, sometimes we take for granted that everybody has access to the same information. But there may be some people watching today who this is their first time hearing this. So thank you for providing the information, and thank you guys for taking the time to meet us in the break room. Listen, if you're being blessed, we want you to share this with a friend. We want you to invite somebody, tag somebody, and let them know great information is being shared. And as always, I want you to make another decision to meet us next week at the same time in the same place. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Ruby. We wish you guys a very, very happy Thanksgiving, and we pray that the blessings of the Lord rest upon every area of your life. We'll see you next week. Y'all make today a great day.